The crimes which hit the headlines for obvious reasons are the ones that are the rarest and the most shocking. Crimes against the elderly are a case in point. Attacks on elderly people are extremely rare, particularly in their own homes, although the publicity they receive can lead us to think they are more commonplace than they really are. But it's even more rare for an old person to be attacked without any conceivable motive. But this seems to be what has happened in our next case. Fred Maltby was in his 70s. A quiet man, he'd always lived on his own near Lincoln, farming his small plot of land. 9 weeks ago, sometime during the evening of Tuesday, October the 1st, Fred was murdered in his living room. Our film begins near the city of Lincoln. For the past 40 years, Fred Maltby had lived here in this farm cottage in Brant Road on the outskirts of the city. Fred seldom went far afield, and when he did go out, he'd use the back door, leaving it unlocked behind him. An early riser, he was always one of the first customers at the village store across the road.
Morning, Linda.
Morning, Fred. Come for your bread?
That's right. Is it fresh in?
It is.
Good. I'll take the usual pie for you.
Fred was quiet, kept himself to himself. He was always cheery, do anything for anybody if they asked him. He used to come in first thing in the morning, pick up his bread and milk, then probably come over later on in the day. He never was the sort of man to do things all at once. He'd come over for little bits and pieces.
Fred used some of his 15-acre smallholding to grow a variety of vegetables, which he sold from the shed next to the house. He rented the rest to local people for grazing horses and cattle. During the property boom of 1988, some developers offered Fred £500,000 for his land. That offer was quickly withdrawn once the boom became a slump, but it is possible that someone thought Fred was better off than he really was. One of Fred's oldest friends was Bill Lockley, who runs the garage next door. Fred himself was a skilled mechanic, and he'd often drop by for long chats.
Well, I think I've known Fred for about 25 years. It's getting on a bit now, isn't it?
I suppose it is, yeah.
He used to come very often to the garage. We used to talk about things, and he used to come for spares and repairs to his cars, tractor parts. I shouldn't have thought he had a lot of money myself, because he never spent a lot of money. I don't know, he lived in a poor way, I suppose.
But as you say, you can't keep welding them up.
No, you can't. No, that's true.
It's Tuesday the 1st of October, the day Fred died. By late afternoon, the weather was becoming blustery. Fred made his usual call at the local shop for his evening paper. 2 hours later, when Irena Grint and a friend brought their horses into the field, Fred was his usual cheery self.
Hello, ladies.
Hi there.
Winter's coming early with a vengeance.
I always found Fred very chatty, actually. He knew all the people around here. He'd seen children grow up. He knew 3 generations around here.
See you in the morning.
You expect so?
Fred probably finished his work outside shortly before 7.
Elm tea. The gypsies swear by it. I bet they do. I bet they say, what the bloody hell's that?
Normally, he'd spend the evening at home watching the television, although he would often go out for a short stroll.
You can taste the bark, can't you?
Just after 9 o'clock that night, a local resident saw Fred walking along Brant Road towards his front gate. That was the last time any of his friends or neighbours saw him alive. Half an hour after that, Caroline Banks had just called in at the Boundary Garage to buy some chocolate. As she crossed the road, she saw 2 men hanging around by the hedge near Fred's gate. At about the same time, Mick Cox was turning into Brant Road.
I was travelling towards the new housing estate, up the Brant Road towards Wallington, and on my right-hand side, 2 lads appeared.
As Mick braked, a white Ford Capri had to swerve to avoid driving into him. Another witness remembers two men running down the path by the local doctor's surgery, heading towards a housing estate off Larne Road. It wasn't until the middle of the next day that a friend calling round to buy some vegetables realised something was seriously wrong.
Take it out of the box. I'm sure I didn't.
Are you there, Fred?
Someone have picked it up?
Stolen the opal.
Well, it's a possibility.
Fred? Fred? Are you there? Fred? Fred? Are you there?
Beverly!
It's not.
Well, it certainly didn't make its own way out of here. Had to be Pam. Now, you're going to have to go and front her about it. And as soon as possible.
Well, Stuart Clifton, how had Fred been killed and why?
Well, it was a particularly horrific killing. Mr. Maltby had been killed with an axe, and despite extensive searches of the local area and the River Witham, which runs nearby, we failed to find it. The motive for the murder is a little unclear. The only thing that seems to be missing from Mr. Maltby's home is a wallet, similar to this one, which would contain only a small amount of money, perhaps no more than £20. And it seems particularly horrific to kill a man of Mr. Maltby's stature for such a paltry sum of money.
He certainly didn't seem to have any enemies, did he?
No, he didn't.
What are the descriptions you have of the two men who were seen running away by several witnesses?
Well, there are two witnesses that have compiled first an e-fit that you can see, and secondly the artist's impression. I should emphasise that both are of the same man. He's described as about 18 to 25, about 5 feet 10 in height. He has light brown or mousy coloured hair, cut short on top and perhaps long in the collar. You'll see that one witness describes him with an earring and the other doesn't.
You don't have such a good description of the second man?
No, the second man, his description is very meagre, really. The witnesses only saw quite a fleeting glimpse of him. He again is in the same 18 to 25 age group, has dark hair and is of similar build.
And you are satisfied, are you, that these two witnesses both saw the same two men?
Yes, indeed. In fact, the second witness saw the two men running across the car park of the doctor's surgery opposite at around the same time, and they were running with some purpose.
Now, what would the driver of that white Capri have seen?
Well, he may have seen the two men. He certainly may be able to help us pinpoint the time, because Mr. Cox is unclear about exactly what time it was that he saw the men. Consequently, we may be able to piece together the story a little better with the second witness.
Right, so we do need you, if you were the driver of that white Capri, to give us a ring. If you can help at all, I'll give you the numbers to call. If you can help Mr. Clifton and his colleagues trace those two men or shed any light at all on why Mr. Maltby was killed. You can speak to us now here in the studio on 081 811 8181 or contact the Lincolnshire Police Headquarters direct on 0522 532222. That's 0522, the code for Lincoln, 532222.
Partnership that's led so far to at least 2 violent deaths. You may recall a murder reconstruction we did 3 months ago in Lincolnshire, where Fred Maltby was robbed and battered in his home. Fred Maltby was a quiet and self-contained man whose home was in a village just south of Lincoln. He'd lived in this farm cottage for 40 years and seldom ventured far afield. Property developers had once offered him £500,000 for his 15-acre smallholding, and it's possible someone thought Fred was better off than he really was. On Tuesday, the 1st of October last year, at 9:45 p.m, a witness was driving home past Fred's house when he had to swerve to avoid 2 men running across the street. They were last seen heading towards a local housing estate on Larne Road. Since then, another man, Joe Rylatt, has been killed, and the detective in charge of the case, Superintendent Stuart Clifton, has now linked the 2 inquiries. The victims lived about 2 miles apart, both were retired, both were thought to keep cash on the premises, both were attacked on Tuesday evenings, and both were killed in the same way. Joe Rylatt was divorced and lived alone in a flat above one of the 2 betting shops he'd started up in Lincoln. One of the shops was managed by his son Eddie, and Alan had now more or less retired. He was shy but charming, fond of poetry, of music and of golf. And though he could be tough in business, among his friends he had a reputation for generosity, sometimes making loans of several £1,000s.
If your hands are apart, then you'll slice it for sure. Okay?
Twice a week or so, Joe would walk just round the corner to St Botolph's Court, which is sheltered accommodation for old people. His mum has lived here for several years.
Oh, Joe.
The last time she was to see him was the night he died, Tuesday, the 28th of January. He was with her till around 8:30. Meanwhile, opposite Joe's shop in High Street, a security guard noticed someone waiting. There may be nothing sinister in this, but a man was sitting in a red or orange C-registered Astra. Do you know who it was? He honked the horn and waved at someone.
Oh, it's lovely.
At about 8:25, another witness came across another car in Bargate.
I noticed a brown Escort car, and I saw a man stood at the driver's side door with fair to mousy coloured hair, about 5'10", 5'11" tall, with green mountain boots or Wellingtons on.
She's asleep now.
Before he left, Joe saw his mother's care assistant. She was the last person known to have seen him before he died.
You're off now, then?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't made her anything to eat.
Oh, that's all right. I'm just going home for a while. I'll be back about 10. I'll make her something then.
Oh, okay. Thank
There
you.
you go.
Thank you.
Question of sport, which...
Someone else, though, was to speak to Joe that night. A friend who placed a flutter with him now and then.
The two programmes when Ian returns from the England tour. Bill's partners tonight are Ian...
Hello, Alan. It's Mike. Yeah, fine. Yeah, I'm dogging it tonight, yes. Oxford, if that's okay. 1, 2, 9 o'clock on. 50p reverse. Oh, I've got you a bad time, have I? Yeah, okay, bye. Bye. It wasn't a normal Alan-Mike telephone conversation, in the sense that he was a little more hurried. There was noises in the background, which I heard distinctly, i.e. banging, and also voices and a little bit of laughter.
Then, at 10 to 9...
I was walking down Bargate, past Rylatt's bookmakers, and I saw a bloke crouched down in the side entrance. He was wearing a suede jacket, maybe leather.
Did you see someone here as well? Upstairs, Joe had been preparing sandwiches. Clearly something, or someone, had interrupted him. About 50 minutes later, another witness was crossing High Street just opposite Joe Rylatt's shop. And this woman saw them a little further down the road.
I passed these two youths that were running wildly. They ran up St Catherine's. They had to run into the road to avoid two old ladies, and a car beeped to them. I had to stop at the traffic lights. When they got towards the lights, they shot out into the road. Again, a car had to sound his horn and avoid them. I passed them just going past the St Catherine's garage on Newark Road, and that was the last time I saw them.
Did you also see them? Or were you in one of the cars that swerved out to avoid them? Joe Rylatt's safe was open. £3,000 was missing. Next morning, when Joe's son, Eddie, arrived to open up the shop, he found his father lying dead with severe wounds to his head. Stuart Clifton, murder is rare. For a man to kill twice successively is very rare, but for two men to kill in successive episodes, it's almost unheard of.
It's certainly unheard of in Lincolnshire. Two murders that are so similar in the space of 4 months causes me to worry a great deal. I'm worried that this may develop into yet another murder, may develop into a serial killing. Because of that, I'm using Crimewatch to appeal to the public of Lincoln. I believe that there are two people concerned in these murders, that perhaps only one has done the killing, and perhaps the second one has felt the need to tell somebody about it. Tonight I appeal to that person to come forward and contact me through Crimewatch so that we can prevent another tragedy occurring.
You think it's as serious as that?
I do believe that there is the potential for another murder. I'm quite hopeful that someone in Lincoln will take the time and trouble tonight to ring us in the studio so that we can prevent yet another serious incident occurring.
Now, they make quite an odd couple, these two, don't they?
Yes, they do. One is rather large, a little over 6 foot, and the other's quite small. The bigger of the two is described as a skinny build. He's got mousy-coloured hair, and he wore a corduroy coat, something similar to this. And one of the points of appeal I'd like to get over tonight is if anybody in the city of Lincoln knows anyone who fits the description that I've just given, who wears a coat of this type, then I would encourage them to ring me urgently in the studio tonight. They don't have to give their name.
The smaller guy was wearing distinctive clothing too, in as much as vivid white shoes, trainers or something.
Yes, the smaller man had a bomber jacket on. He's about 5'6" with dark hair, again in his mid-20s. He had dark trousers and white training shoes, which looked as if they may be in new condition.
Now, obviously, people living in Lincoln are going to be fairly concerned about what you've said. Perhaps we should make it clear that they seem to be, firstly, acting only at quite long distances in time, one from another, secondly, going for quite specific targets, but perhaps there are also things that people can do to protect themselves.
Well, yes, of course. Clearly, there are two people in Lincoln who are prepared to commit murder. We know that one is tall and one is quite short. If people are visiting and they fit that general description, then obviously the public must be aware of that. I would not encourage anybody to let people into their houses unless they're quite sure of the people that they've got at their door.
And if people have got suspicions about somebody who might be the killer, you suspect that person will have what characteristics that people might recognise apart from being tallish or 5'6"?
Yes, I'm fairly confident that there will be one dominant personality in this, one killer perhaps. And that killer will be known in the city of Lincoln for his extreme violence. So I'd appeal for people in the city of Lincoln who know people that fit this description and who do show these violent traits to contact us here in the studio tonight.
Well, please ring straight away. The urgency is pretty self-evident. 081 811 8181. If somebody has told you anything in confidence or you've strong suspicions, don't let this go any further, please. 081 811 8181, or try the incident room in Lincoln itself, 0522. That's 532 222. 0522 532 222.
When somebody strangled her. She had a 4-month-old baby, and she and the father Michael were planning their wedding. She was likeable, she was straightforward, and why she was killed is a mystery that maybe someone watching can now solve.
It's the Cookie Monster.
She had a thing about car boot sales. Every time I went down a car boot sale, she would immediately go to the nearest store that had the baby clothes or the baby toys on.
We can always get round in you and me, can't we?
She was always pestering me for, you know, a couple of quid here and a couple of quid there so she could go and buy those things, which made me laugh. We've been together about 2 years. She was a fun-loving person. She loved Sarah Louise. She was a good mother to Sarah Louise. She would have made a good wife for me as well.
Can you get some ice?
Yeah, sure. Is it right if I have a fag while I'm down there?
Yeah, no problem.
Sharon worked 3 nights a week at the Market Cross pub in Grantham.
Not so bad, how are you?
There's not a job that she wouldn't do. You know, it's very hard to find people like that. And she was one of the best. One of the best. And I miss her.
Tonight, police hope to eliminate a man seen by a friend of Sharon's a month before she died.
I was on my way to Woolworths when I saw Sharon at the rear of Morrison's in the passageway. She was stood with a man. They were talking quite intensely.
I walked past them and carried on towards Woolworths. I came out 10 to 15 minutes later and walked over to the short wall by the passageway to have a cigarette. As I sat down, I saw that Sharon was still talking to the man. She seemed to move away from the man towards me, and he followed her. I did think Sharon looked relieved to see me. Who's that? Doesn't matter. She didn't want to tell me. Don't do that. So being nosy, I strained to watch him walk away.
If this was you, please call. Friday, July the 1st. Sharon was working at the pub and her boyfriend Michael worked nights, so Sharon's friend Emma used to babysit.
We'd known each other for about 6 years, and we'd just hear it off straight away. She's got a great personality.
You all right? Okay. I've just put him down.
She came around about 6:30, 7:15, like what she did every Friday.
If you need them, and I'll give you the key just in case you need anything else. Okay. So I'll see you at the usual time.
Yeah, I'll see you later. Bye-bye, darling. She just stayed for a couple of minutes. See you later. And then she went off to work.
Still going out Sunday night?
Yeah, of course we are.
Where do you want to go then, Doug?
I don't mind, it's up to you.
Should we start off the King's Arms to see how we go?
Yeah, sounds great. Is Mark still looking after Sarah and Louise?
Yeah, bless her, it's good like that.
Yeah, it looks nice. Did you do it yourself?
Yeah.
It was just a normal, typical Friday night.
Yes, Doug, what can I get you?
Nothing unusual about it, and Sharon was in a really good mood.
Thanks a lot for coming along, ladies and gentlemen. Finish your drinks now, please, and start to make your way out the door. Thanks a lot.
After the last people have gone, we always have a drink at the end of the night.
I'm off, mate.
Okay, see you later. Take care. One of the last people to leave was Sharon. Nothing out of the ordinary with her. She said cheerio when I see her go by the windows. It was the last time I saw her.
Got to the pipes in the morning as well.
Sharon often walked home. Did you see her when she left the pub shortly after midnight?
You okay?
By now, Emma and her boyfriend Simon were expecting Sharon back to pick up the baby.
Oh, you're all right for a bit longer.
Meanwhile, on Harloxton Road, not far from the pub, according to an anonymous caller, Sharon was arguing with someone outside Archway's garage.
Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks.
Were you that driver? Please phone us now. You're a crucial witness. The caller described the man as being in his mid-30s and with long, dark hair. Next, a taxi driver noticed Sharon. She'd now gone back towards the pub and to a public phone.
I was travelling along Wharf Road towards the roundabout when I saw Sharon arguing with a gentleman outside the phone box. It seemed at the time that the gentleman was pulling Sharon away from the phone box if Sharon wanted to get into it. I noticed that the gentleman was wearing a white short-sleeved T-shirt and jeans, and he had shoulder-length hair.
I'd arranged to meet Sharon at 8 o'clock to go shopping. When I arrived home from work, I noticed that the kitchen light was still on, which I found was unusual.
Sharon? Sharon? Sharon?
Next day, Sharon was discovered among undergrowth in a car park, not far from where she'd last been seen. She'd been strangled. Mr. Clifton, most points of appeal are pretty self-evident from that reconstruction, but perhaps what's not self-evident is you're very, very anxious to get that anonymous caller to ring again who saw Sharon just before she disappeared.
There were, in fact, 2 anonymous calls, both of which came in on Monday the 4th of July, which was really the first day of this inquiry. And the information given by both anonymous callers was very, very similar. Now, there are 3 possible motives for those calls. The first is that it's an out-and-out hoax. The second, that it's the killer who's trying to lay a false trail. And the one that we actually favour is that the man who rang in actually saw what it was that he described to us. Because of that, we think that he probably saw the killer. So he's very central to our inquiry, and we need to speak to him.
Now, he may say to himself, but, you know, I've told you what I saw. Why do you need any more information?
Well, he told us that the man that he saw was about 30 years of age with long dark hair, but different people have different perceptions of what is long hair. For some it'll be on the collar, for others much longer. He also said that he'd seen Sharon with this man before. When? Where? These are the sort of questions that we need to put to this man.
And he plainly knows her well.
He does indeed. In fact, he claimed that on the second call, and we believe that the two calls are probably made by the same person, although that's not self-evident. On the second occasion, he said that he was so concerned about this argument that was going on that he slowed his car down and spoke to Sharon through the window of the car.
As we saw in that reconstruction there. He also said that he thought that the man was wearing a Leeds United T-shirt like this.
Yes, the first caller said that the man was 30 years of age with long dark hair and was wearing a white Leeds United shirt. Now, there are several strips, and this is one of them.
OK. Now, the man in Grantham city centre that we saw a month earlier, roughly a month earlier, sometime in June, this is somebody who looks similar to the description, I know, but this is really someone you want to eliminate from the inquiry.
Yes, indeed. There's no evidence at all to indicate that this man is anything at all to do with the murder. The mere fact that he fits the description of that given by the anonymous caller means that we need to trace him and eliminate him from our inquiry.
OK, Sharon was likeable, she didn't have an enemy in the world, no obvious motive for this. You need to find, I gather, anybody but anybody who ever knew her in any capacity.
Yes, we have traced a number of people. You're quite right when you say that no motive is clear. Certainly it's not clear to us what the motive was, although, as we've already said locally, that there are some items missing from the body. But we don't believe that robbery or theft is the actual motive. It's not clear to us what it is. We need to build up quite a comprehensive picture of Sharon's lifestyle. We're in the throes of doing that with a number of people, but anybody that can add new information, we'd be delighted to hear from.
Mr. Clifton, thank you. The number here is free. It's 0500 600 600. Please, if you knew Sharon, if you can help in any way, call us or try the incident room in Grantham. That's 0476 62501. 0476, the code for Grantham, 62501. In blue dungarees. These are the two main clues in our next case, the murder of Julie Pacey. And detectives can't work out who the man is, where the car comes from, or whether the two are in any way connected. Maybe you can help. It happened 5 weeks ago at the Pacey's home in Grantham in Lincolnshire.
How's it going?
Everything's almost ready.
Okay, well, the table's set. Anything else?
You could put the bread out.
Helen, tea's ready.
Okay, coming. Matthew, tea's on the table.
Be in a minute.
We always ate together every night. Always in the dining room.
How was football practice?
We got married in 1977, on exactly the same day as my mum and dad got married on. Julie was a wonderful person. She got on with everybody. She was so kind and caring and considerate. And that's the sort of person she was. She lived for the family.
Friday the 23rd of September, and Julie was at home as usual, because on most days a local girl stopped at the Pacey's after school until her own mother got back from work.
I was walking down Longcliffe Road from my school when I saw a strange man walking into Mrs. Pacey's driveway.
Come in!
When I turned into the drive, I saw the man coming back. He was wearing blue dungarees and workman's boots, which were brown. He looked as if he was around 35. He was a fairly chubby man with a big round face, and he was all pink.
Do you want a drink?
Yes, please, Miss Pacey.
Yeah, then a man just came into the house. There was a knock at the door and I thought it was you, so I said, come in.
Julie later told her family how the man had asked for directions to Eskdale Road. Was that workman you? If so, for obvious reasons, please call and eliminate this line of inquiry.
Yeah, I'm PA.
3 days later, after the weekend, Monday the 26th of September, and that morning Julie was at her part-time job.
Julie had been working at the nursery since December '93. She was a very happy, bubbly person. She liked the children, and because she played so actively with them, they responded very well to her. That particular day I remember very vividly seeing Julie playing with a group of children. They were all very happy and they were playing, chasing bubbles in the garden.
Julie came home at about 2:45. Though the family car is an Audi 80, several people insist that mysteriously, on other occasions, they'd also seen her in a 5 Series BMW. In fact, at around this time, not far away, an acquaintance of Julie's was on her way out, and she's certain she saw the BMW again.
Driving along Longcliffe Road towards Manthorpe Road, I came up behind a blue-grey BMW. It was indicating to turn into Julie's driveway. I presumed it was Julie driving, as I'd seen her in a BMW before. As it turned into her driveway, I had to slow right down. As I glanced up the driveway, I saw her Audi parked there.
Julie left the house again that day. She was seen in Highcliffe Road, around the corner from her home.
I was just about to get into a taxi, having been visiting a friend on Highcliffe Road. I saw this man coming towards me in blue overalls. The car stopped for a moment and then carried down towards the junction of Longcliffe Road and indicated left. The man looked as though he was going to continue up Highcliffe Road, but ran back down towards the junction.
An hour later, Julie's daughter Helen was on her way home from school.
Hi, Mum, I'm home. Mum? Mum? Mum?
Her mother had been sexually assaulted and strangled. Superintendent Billingsley, this guy in blue dungarees, you've obviously got to eliminate him. He's been seen in this area over a period of several days.
Yes, he has, that's right. Between the Thursday before the murder, that's the 22nd, and the day after the murder, which is the 24th on the Tuesday, he's been seen on a number of occasions on that estate and also in Grantham, dressed in the overalls, and that's a fairly predominant feature, that he should be dressed in those, with a particularly red-faced, most of the witnesses describe him as.
He's wearing brown workman's boots, I gather. He's about 5'8", fairly sort of normal height, thinning hair, as we can see. He was asking directions a number of times.
Yes, that's right, and it was particularly interesting, I think, on the Thursday, because he was asking directions for an industrial estate that was far away from that Manthorpe estate, at the other side of Grantham. He didn't ask for any repeat directions, which is abnormal. There wasn't a vehicle seen, and he went away. And again, he was wearing these blue overalls.
Now, he was seen on the Thursday, on the Friday, not then over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday.
That's right.
He was seen, as we've just saw in that reconstruction, running back after the car nearly missed him on the Monday, just before Julie Pacey was murdered. But again, he was seen in the area on the Tuesday.
Yes, he was. That's fairly interesting, because it's between the Manthorpe estate and the next residential estate, which is the Orchard Tree estate. A man was seen at 10 to 9, that's the following morning after the murder, kicking the grass as if he's looking for something. And again later that day he's in Grantham town, going into a shop and acting totally suspicious by the shopkeeper in his actions. And again dressed in the boiler suit, or that type of overall, blue overall, and again with a red face.
Well, it might be obviously entirely innocent, as might this blue BMW. Quite bizarre, this, that the family is adamant that Julie never had access to a blue BMW, and so many people on the estate say they've seen her in it. Sometimes, I think one was 7 or 10 days before the murder.
Yes, that's right. You're absolutely right. The family are adamant. There is no association that they can tell me about which puts the BMW with that household. And yet there are people who knew Julie, who knew Julie's car, the Audi, albeit that it was the same colour. They know that she had an Audi. They've seen the Audi next to the BMW, in fact, on the driveway. So there's no doubt about the existence of that.
And on the afternoon of the murder, that's Monday the 26th of September, a BMW of that description, blue, perhaps blue-grey, seen speeding away from the estate towards Grantham.
Yes, on 2 occasions, at 3:20 on that day, leaving the estate and, as you quite rightly say, pulling off towards the Grantham. And then again, just before 4 o'clock, another car, again described as a 5 Series BMW, driving fast along Longcliffe Road.
Very fast?
Very fast.
I take it if somebody comes forward and says that was me, you're not going to do them for speeding there?
Absolutely not.
You need to eliminate that as well. And if you can tie any of these events together, either the man, if that was you, or if you have any idea who that might be, or the car, if you can explain that, here's our free call number, 0500 600 600. We're live, of course, the lines are open. If you can help, please call us now, 0500 600 600. Or you could try the incident room direct, 0476 62501. That's Grantham, or 0476 62501. How often have you heard a burglar alarm go off and done nothing about it? And the trouble is, of course, there are so many false alarms. Even so, a bell or a siren going off generally makes us more observant, and that might help to solve the case we're showing next. 7 weeks ago, Kath Hempsall triggered her alarm at home in Lincoln, and detectives now need help to find her killer.
New Year's Eve at Kath's house had become quite a tradition, and the old microphones came out at the drop of a hat, really. We weren't that musical. We just enjoyed singing, especially after a few drinks. It was a good time. We had fun.
Kath Hempsall was a part-time midwife. She lived with her husband and 7-year-old daughter on Lincoln's busy inner ring road.
Oh no! Oh, just missed it.
Hey, Daddy, I'm eating Mummy.
Kath's life revolved around Andy and Louise. She was devoted to her husband, and especially to her child.
Handed stuff. You didn't mention the commercials.
Louise! Here, put your shoes on, Pat. Hello? Oh, Liz, is everything all right? Yeah? No. Oh, Louise, go and brush your hair.
Yes, I think they're going to give me a perm. They can see me about 9:15, which means I could get to you about 10:30, maybe 11.
Yeah, I've got one job to do after I've dropped Louise off, and then I should be back here about 9:30. Yeah. OK. All right. See you later, then. Bye.
Louise, hurry up with your leaves.
Have you got your lunchbox?
Yes, Mum.
It's near the block of flats. Excuse me. Can you take your seat a minute? I'll be with you in a minute. Contact the RAC.
Looks like I'm off school for the rest of the week.
Yes, we're worried about reducing...
We've been doctor's surgery. My son had a chest infection, and we were rather worried about it.
By this time, Kath had dropped Louise at school, had briefly been into town, and was now on her way home.
What a hideous colour. Can you believe people should have such colours?
My son was he had a very down sort of mood, and I was really trying to cheer him up. That's why I kept noticing things and chatting to him. I wonder if that's... Oh, it's all right. There's a car in the driveway. I found it's in remarkably good condition for its year. It's a white rich like this one. And it was then that I became aware of someone running along the pavement. It's all right, I'm not going to run you over. I know where the brake is. But he shot off towards the rear of the white Transit. And that was the last I saw of him.
Well, I did say I'd get to my sister as soon as possible.
I'll get you out for about 11 at the latest, I should think. OK, get to lean right the way back.
Two traffic policemen happened to be driving by and heard the alarm.
Made a very thorough search, really, but couldn't see anything disturbed or anything that seemed strange, so we returned to Lincoln Police Station.
How long were you there?
We left just after 10, was there about 10 minutes in all.
Yep, OK. I'll see if I get hold of a key holder for you.
I'll leave that with you.
All right, bye now.
Although the police had heard the alarm, they didn't know a panic button had been hit.
Hello, police. I'm really worried about my sister. She lives at Longdales Road. I've been round there myself and she's just not answering. The car's sitting there, the alarm bell's going off. She must be in. It's just not... I'm really worried about her. I don't know what's going... There must be something terribly wrong.
The police found Kath in her hallway. She'd been stabbed over 30 times.
I was prepared for a shock because I knew already that something was wrong.
Can you just stay in the car? An officer will be with you shortly, OK?
I don't know when the realisation of the way in which she had been killed hit me. I really don't know. Sometimes I wonder if it still hasn't.
Tom Coates is the head of Lincolnshire CID. It was actually a fairly foggy morning that morning, Tuesday, October the 11th. That chap running across the road, though, is by far your best clue, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He's very important to us. He may have, of course, been there quite innocently, and if he was, then we would like him to come forward. He may have been waiting for a bus or waiting for somebody else.
How good a description have you got of him?
Well, it's quite a good description. He's 17 to 25 years of age, 5'8" tall, slim build, pale complexion, wearing scruffy clothing and most insignificantly a woolen hat.
Now, somebody like him was obviously hanging around that area for an hour or so because someone was seen by the phone box about 300 yards down the road.
Yes, they were. There was a man seen of similar description near the telephone box, and several other people have also told us about him being seen in the area.
Now, apart from that man, the other distinctive thing that was sighted was this white Ford, probably Ford Transit, this Y-registered vehicle. Now, what do we know about this? It was there for some time too, wasn't it?
It was there for quite a long time, and certainly all the time that we were interested in. And it's a white van. It's described as a transit, but it may be another vehicle of a similar type, similar shape.
Again, you need to eliminate that if that was a delivery or someone hanging about there for a perfectly innocent purpose. Someone was also seen in the driveway of the house. This could have been mistaken for one of the police officers who were investigating it, but maybe not.
It could have been, but the witnesses have described a man of 40 to 55 years of age being in the drive, and if the person was there, we'd like him to come forward.
And a woman walking some dogs, a potential witness you need to find very quickly.
Yes, a woman with two small dogs walking along the road. We would like her to come forward. She must be able to identify herself.
Well, if that was you, if there's anything where you can help, 0500 600 600. It's free here to the studio, 0500 600 600. Or you can call the incident room in Lincoln. That's on 0522 558 542. That's 0522, the code for Lincoln, 558 542. Brief appeal about a tragic and unusual crime in Lincolnshire. As a result, detectives have gathered from Crimewatch viewers several more sightings and enough new evidence to turn the case into a reconstruction. It's about Mrs. Vera Laver, who lived in the village of Tetney, just south of Grimsby. And the events you're about to see unfold took place 12 weeks ago. Our scene starts on Thursday, September the 19th.
Mum lived in Tetney about 47 years, and most people knew who my mum was.
Hi, Mum, you okay? I'm fine.
On the Thursday morning, I come round because she'd got this letter from the gas board and it was worrying her.
Of course not, Mum.
She was a very caring person. She had a very generous nature and she was a lovely mum and she liked having all the family around her.
Well, that's sorted out then. What do you want done about this one? Do you want it thrown out?
Oh, no. You fill it in if you want to.
I normally go through a mail and there was this shopping survey. I was going to post it when I left, but I forgot, so it got left on the table.
Dawn the following day, Friday, September the 20th.
I just left home around 5:10. Drove to Tetney, down Station Road. As I approached the junction of the A16, I saw the chap stood on the right-hand side, right back near the hedge. I had a second glance at him as I pulled out, and I thought, I wonder what he's doing at this time of morning, stood there near the hedge. Because he didn't look, as though he was waiting for a lift.
Who was the man? How did he get there? And did anyone else see him? Tetney, 2 miles away and 2.5 hours later.
As I reversed out the drive on my way to work, I saw a man walking towards me. He was dressed in dark clothing, he was aged in his 30s to 40s. The main thing I remember about him was the amount of stubble that he had on his face. He seemed very much out of place, not somebody that you would normally see in the village.
Come on, G. There you go. I see you. Come on.
Just around the corner from Vera's house, a neighbour noticed 2 men. One was rough-looking, the other was smart and walking a dog. Who was he? He could be an important witness. Further down the road, the scruffy man was seen again.
I was just getting dressed and I saw this guy and I thought, I've never seen him before around here. He was about 5'11" to 6 foot tall, of normal to stocky build, rough looking. He had dark wavy hair and he had a bit of stubble on his face, quite a pale complexion. I noticed him again from the reflection across the way. He was walking towards the cutting.
Oh, better go and post these, hadn't I? Now, you can't come this time. You can come a bit later, OK? Good girl.
At about 8:30, a neighbour noticed Vera heading for the cutting, a footpath that led through to the postbox. The cutting is quite a busy thoroughfare between gardens through the village.
Morning.
A villager heard moans, but thought no more about it.
Tetney 298394.
I went to post the letters down the footpath and I was attacked.
I couldn't believe it. I felt so sorry for my mum to have to go through something like that at her age. I mean, it'd be bad enough for anybody, but, for somebody of my mum's age, I felt shaky for me mum, as if it had happened to me, so,
Hello? We need your help. My mother's been raped.
Half an hour later, on the busy A16 from Louth to Grimsby.
As I was driving towards Tolbar roundabout, I spotted a man in dark clothing, heavily dressed for the type of morning it was. He had a black woolly hat on. I thought the jumper could have possibly been navy blue, and his jeans possibly black. He was a thick-set man, tall, and his hair was black, turning grey.
Did you see him that day? That afternoon, Vera came home from hospital and went to run a bath. Within moments, she suffered a major stroke.
To think what she went through in the morning and then to die in the afternoon, you know, we couldn't believe it after all that she'd gone through, and then she died. I mean, we all know she'd still be here now if that hadn't have happened to her in the morning. I always thought she was going to live to be in her 90s. And now it's all been taken away from her.
Martin Bontoft, how good a description was Vera Laver able to give you?
Yes, she was able to give us a description of her attacker, and that was that he was a white male. He was 30 to 40 years old. He was around 6 feet tall, and she described him of a muscular physique. He had several days' growth of stubble on his face, 3 to 4 days' growth of stubble, and she particularly remembered that he had piercing, menacing eyes. He was wearing a black woolen hat, and he had a top or jumper on that was rough to the touch, and dark trousers or jeans.
Now let's take a close-up at that artist's impression, and
Right.
I should say this is what you describe as a composite. Now what does that mean, and what are the limitations?
Yes, what that means is that is an artist's impression that has been made up from a variety of different witnesses. It is not meant as an exact image of the offender necessarily, or even the person that was seen in that area. It is a rough guide.
Do you think he's done this sort of thing before?
I think that this man will have committed this type of offence in the past, yes.
So there may be women watching who've been frightened by him, who've been approached by him, even perhaps raped by him.
Absolutely,
Who you want to call in?
Yes, absolutely.
And you've got DNA evidence, so you can eliminate people very quickly.
Yes, it's made things much simpler now. If we do get any suspects, we simply need to invite them to give us a sample. We can get a DNA profile from that and compare it with the one we've got.
And if you think he's done this before in the past, presumably you're concerned he'll do it again in the future?
I'm very concerned and think that he may try it again, yes.
Whatever help you think you have, do please call 0500 600 600. It's free, and it could stop a repetition. 0500 600 600, or you could try the incident room direct on 01522 532 222. That's Lincoln 532 222. Exceptional. This made headlines because it's unique. Never in British criminal history has anything like this happened before.
He did a year at Bristol University during Freshers' Week to say I've joined some clubs, including skydiving, and he knew what we'd think.
He phoned us after his first jump. He had literally landed. And he said, I missed the drop zone, I just landed between some cows.
But thoroughly fired up to it.
Absolutely loved it.
And he jumped then from then on as often as he possibly could.
Steven Hilder was at an army college in Oxfordshire, and after about 18 months of parachuting, he took up formation skydiving with 2 friends. At the start of July, they were due to compete at Hibaldstow airfield in Lincolnshire. He arrived before his teammates and did 2 solo jumps. It was Wednesday, the 2nd of July, and as always after a jump, he repacked his parachute himself. The process involves folding and rolling, checking all the lines and webbing. Sometime after 5 o'clock that afternoon, he left the finished rig in the airfield kit room.
It was there from Wednesday afternoon till he collected it shortly before the fatal flight on the Friday afternoon. So during that period of time, the killer somehow got access to this room and either removed his kit or tampered with it here in this room.
On Thursday, the weather had been bad, so the competition was delayed and the competitors practiced on the ground. That night, they all assembled for a fancy dress karaoke party. Steve's team went in drag. Detective Superintendent Colin Andrews has no motive, but he does have a party full of suspects.
Well, Stephen's there having a good time with his friends, and clearly the person who killed Stephen may well have been at that disco and may well have known that when they tampered with his parachute, Stephen would jump to his death the following day.
It was a really good evening, and sort of everyone was dressed up and looking stupid, so...
And Steve was having great fun standing up for the karaoke, and that was just him standing up to just make a fool of himself.
Yeah, everyone was still having fun. It was sort of closing down around about 2:30, and I left just while the DJ was saying that it was going to be shutting down in a few songs, and Steve stayed around to the end.
In relation to the party, we need to trace everybody who was there. We know during the week there were 200 to 300 people who attended the site. If we trace all the people, then we will trace the murderer.
Steve had his own car up and he was just sleeping in that. We got the tannoy announcement saying that we were sort of going to be going up.
Once we got our kit on, we go to the main area where we kit check each other. On that day with Stephen's kit, everything was absolutely normal. Whoever did it knew exactly what was and wasn't checked.
While we were waiting to get on the plane, we just went through the dive we were going to do, made sure everything was clear in our heads, and just had a laugh and joke around before we got on the plane.
The police and Steve's family have given this footage to Crimewatch in the hope it might prick someone's conscience. This is the moment Steve jumped from 13,000 feet with his sabotage parachute and a sabotaged reserve.
The actual dive was the best dive we'd ever done. And there was a point in the dive that we all just made eye contact and could just tell that we were all really happy and knew that we were doing really well.
They broke formation at around 4,000 feet just as they went through the cloud. Steve now had 10 seconds to live.
Well, Stephen would have known that once he tried to deploy his reserve chute and it didn't work, that he had no chance of survival. And one can only imagine the terror that must have gone through his mind at that time. And he hit the ground doing about 120 miles an hour a few seconds later.
I landed fairly close to the main group. One of them sort of walked out towards me and said that one of the guys on my team hadn't opened a parachute, and I knew immediately it was Steve because I recognised Dave's canopy.
Late on the Friday evening, opened the door to two policemen stood there. And you know something's you're going to be told something. And that's when we were told on a Friday night.
As soon as Stephen's body was found, it was obvious that his parachute had been deliberately tampered with. There were two scenarios here. Had Stephen been killed by somebody, or had he taken his own life?
Steve was just acting normally all the time I saw him. He was really focused and wanted to do well on the jump. I can't believe that it was anything other than murder.
Andrews, was this aimed at Stephen? Could it have been a random attack?
Well, I'm not in a position to rule out a random attack, but my gut feeling is that Stephen was killed by someone that he knew, someone that he'd met at Hibaldstow last week, and for whatever reason, somebody who had a grudge against him.
There have been conspiracy theorists who've said, look, there are movies like Terminal Velocity and Drop Zone. I think it's in Drop Zone that somebody actually is attacked like this. Their parachute's torn on July the 4th, and Stephen died on July the 4th.
Yes, and we are obviously investigating that. What I'm interested in is not the films, but any skydiver who had a particular interest in those sorts of film, and more importantly, was at Hibaldstow last week, because there's no doubt at all that during that week the murderer was present at Hibaldstow and the parachute was definitely sabotaged at the site at Hibaldstow.
Now, you're pretty confident you must talk to everybody who was there at the Collegiate Week skydiving?
Yes, there's no doubt that the murderer was present at Hibaldstow, so we need to speak to every single person who was at Hibaldstow between the 30th of June and the 4th of July. One of the interesting things about this inquiry is that we've spoken to many people who believe they've got nothing interesting to tell us. But in actual fact, when we've spoken to them, they've given us crucial information. So my appeal is to everybody who went there, please contact the police, tell us everything, no matter how minute that detail is, and let us make the judgment as to whether or not it will assist the inquiry.
Now, you say your strong suspicion is that Stephen was deliberately targeted. Has anybody given you a motive, a reason for this?
No, there's no motive at all. Stephen was a 20-year-old student who had a bright future, but whoever did this carried out a wicked act, knowing full well that Stephen couldn't defend himself. They knew that Stephen was well known at the skydiving centre and that his particular parachute was very distinctive. We need to catch this person very quickly.
So anybody who heard an argument that took place that week, heard somebody being slighted by him, somebody taking offence at something he said? I mean, it could be as minor as that, could it?
It could be absolutely anything, yes. It could be a minor argument, a minor disagreement, anything at all.
And presumably the killer will have acted oddly or angrily or something beforehand or perhaps afterwards, or maybe even will have confided in someone.
Absolutely. Certainly we were interested in people who went to Hibaldstow who acted strangely before the killing or after it. And certainly, in my experience, many murderers do actually confess their crimes to a third party. And clearly, if that third party is watching this programme now, I would say, look at that film, think of Stephen's parents, think of Stephen and come forward and tell us what you know.
The police are hopeful that DNA might help them solve this case, which would mean that it's very easy to eliminate people. Come forward, please, if you heard anything, and if you were there at Hibaldstow for that collegiate week. The police need to find you. Just come forward, please. I said this case was unprecedented in Britain. It has been tried before. In April, a Marine in the United States was charged with 13 counts of attempted murder after sabotaging the parachutes of his colleagues. But fortunately, he didn't tamper with the reserve chutes too, so nobody died. Steven Hilder's killer was more thorough and cold-blooded. Call us or call the incident room on 01 724 274 260, or you might contact us by email through our website bbc.co.uk/crime.